And my aunt slapped my daughter at a wedding and laughed. My family said, "She was teaching respect asterisk. My name is Sarah, and I'm 33 years old." I've always felt like the odd one out in my sprawling, traditional family. While they thrived on rigid expectations, unspoken rules, and maintaining a polished facade, I sought a life of genuine connection and quiet joy. My greatest joy, my most precious treasure, was my daughter, Mia, a bright, spirited 6-year-old with a laugh that could fill any room and a boundless curiosity that often led her to explore the world with uninhibited delight. It was Mia's vibrant energy, her innocent authenticity, that unfortunately clashed so dramatically with the stifling formality and strict adherence to protocol that defined my family, ultimately leading to the day that shattered everything. I thought I knew about them. Asterisk. The setting was my cousin's wedding, a grand affair held at a magnificent country estate nestled in the rolling hills of Tuscany, bathed in the golden light of a late afternoon sun. The air was thick with the intoxicating scent of blooming roses and expensive perfume, the sounds of a string quartet drifting elegantly from the ballroom, mingling with the polite chatter of hundreds of guests. It was a picture-perfect scene of European elegance, meticulously designed for flawless photos and curated, cherished memories. I ever the amateur videographer with a passion for capturing life's fleeting moments, had discreetly set up a small camera. It was nestled almost invisibly within a voluminous floral arrangement near the edge of the dance floor, hoping to capture candid, joyous moments of our family celebrating for a future memory compilation. The profound irony of that innocent act would later be devastating. Asterisk. Mia, dressed in a delicate lace dress that made her look like a tiny princess, had been remarkably well behaved for hours. She'd endured the long ceremony, the endless rounds of introductions, and the formal dinner with surprising patience. But as the evening wore on, the combination of sugary pastries from the dessert table and the sheer, unbridled excitement of being at a grown-up party began to bubble over inside her. She wasn't being disruptive or disrespectful. She was simply, gleefully, chasing her slightly older cousin, Leo, around a quiet corner of the dance floor, their giggles echoing a little too loudly in the otherwise sedate atmosphere where adults conversed in hushed tones. They were children, utterly absorbed in their game, oblivious to the unwritten rules of adult decorum. Asterisk. That's when Aunt Brenda appeared. She was my mother's older sister, a woman who carried herself with an air of unshakable authority. Her perfectly coiffed silver hair and impeccably tailored silk suit embodying decades of unwavering adherence to tradition and societal expectations. Aunt Brenda believed in respect above all else, a respect that was often enforced through fear, intimidation, and an unwavering belief in her own superior judgment. She had always made thinly veiled comments about Mia being a bit wild, lacking proper discipline, often accompanied by a disapproving sniff or a dismissive wave of her hand during family gatherings. Her eyes, usually cold and assessing, now gleamed with a self-righteous fury as she watched Mia and Leo. Asterisk. Without a single word, Aunt Brenda intercepted Mia, grabbing her arm with surprising, bone-tightening force. Mia, utterly startled, looked up at her great-aunt, her small face clouded with confusion. Her infectious laughter died instantly on her lips, replaced by a nascent fear. Before I could even register what was happening, before I could push through the small cluster of guests to step in or speak, Aunt Brenda raised her hand and, with a chilling deliberation, delivered a sharp, resounding slap across Mia's delicate cheek. The sound, impossibly loud and sharp, cut through the soft strains of the waltz music, silencing the nearby chatter of a dozen guests. It was a sound that would echo in my nightmares for months. Asterisk. Mia froze, her small hand instinctively flying to her reddened cheek, her face crumpling, her eyes wide and filled with sudden, gut-wrenching terror. darted towards me across the dance floor, brimming with unshed tears. For a split second, a horrifying, profound silence descended upon that corner of the ballroom. It felt like the world held its breath, suspended in disbelief. Then, Aunt Brenda did something even more shocking, something that would forever brand itself into my memory. She didn't flinch, she didn't apologize. Instead, a cruel, triumphant smirk slowly curved her lips, and she let out a short, dismissive laugh, a cold, joyless sound that chilled me to the bone. "There," she announced, her voice carrying an air of absolute, unassailable righteousness, loud enough for those around her to hear. "That's how you teach a child respect." She was being entirely too loud, drawing far too much attention to herself at a dignified affair. My legs moved before my mind could fully process the enormity of the situation. I pushed through the small crowd that had already begun to form, their faces a mixture of shock and awkward discomfort, their eyes flitting between Brenda, Mia, and me. I reached Mia, pulling her trembling, fragile body into my arms. Her little form shuddered uncontrollably against mine, hot, silent tears now streaming down her face, leaving wet tracks on her porcelain skin. Her cheek was scarlet, a clear, angry imprint of Aunt Brenda's hand emblazoned upon it. "Mia, my love," I whispered, holding her impossibly tight, my own voice shaking uncontrollably with a potent cocktail of raw rage, disbelief, and overwhelming protective instinct. "Are you okay? Did she hurt you?" Just then, my parents, who had been engrossed in conversation with the wedding couple's distant relatives nearby, hurried over, drawn by the sudden silence and the subtle commotion. I expected horror, anger, immediate, unequivocal support for their granddaughter. What I got instead was a collective sigh of exasperation, a palpable sense of annoyance that I was making a scene. My mother, Aunt Brenda's younger sister, gave me a look that silently begged me to keep the peace, her eyes flashing a warning. My father, ever the pragmatist and peacekeeper, or so he believed, stepped forward, his arm already around Aunt Brenda's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "Brenda, dear," he chuckled, his tone far too light, a forced joviality, perhaps a little firm, but "Mia, you really do need to learn some manners, sweetie. This is a wedding, after all, not a playground." Then came the words that would burn themselves into my very soul, etching themselves there with acid. My mother, stepping closer, her voice low and firm, almost a hiss, but utterly devoid of any compassion or concern for her own crying granddaughter. "Sarah, for heaven's sake, don't make a scene." Aunt Brenda was only trying to teach Mia respect. She was getting completely out of hand, embarrassing us all. Other relatives, drawn by the unfolding drama, began to chime in, their faces painted with varying degrees of disapproval directed squarely at me and Mia. "She was just trying to help, Sarah," one cousin murmured, a condescending tone in her voice. "Children need a firm hand sometimes," another distant aunt added, nodding sagely. "It's for her own good, you know, for her future." The sheer hypocrisy was breathtaking. My heart didn't just break. It shattered into a million irreparable pieces, not just for Mia, but for the violent shattering illusion of what I thought my family was. This wasn't discipline. It was an unprovoked assault on an innocent child, justified by a collective delusion of what respect truly meant. It was a deliberate act of emotional erasure, a chilling confirmation that their distorted idea of family image, outdated traditions, and the superficial appearance of decorum mattered infinitely more than a child's safety, her emotional well-being, or her fundamental human dignity. The deeper wound was knowing that my own parents, my own flesh and blood, would so readily side with the abuser and gaslight me into believing that this grotesque act was not only acceptable but necessary. It was a complete and utter betrayal. Asterisk that night, as Mia finally cried herself to sleep in my arms, her small body still trembling with the aftershocks of fear and pain, a cold, unwavering resolve settled over me, hardening my spirit. I was done trying to fit into their suffocating mold. I was done being dismissed, ignored, and invalidated. I was done allowing their insidious toxicity to poison my child's innocent spirit. The hidden camera footage. It was all I could think about. I carefully, almost reverently, rushed back to the deserted ballroom, the echoes of the evening's festivities still hanging in the air. My hands trembled as I retrieved the small device from its clever floral hiding spot. As soon as I was back in the quiet sanctuary of my hotel room, I reviewed the footage. There it was, in horrifying, crystal-clear detail. The elegant ballroom, the festive music, Mia's innocent laughter, Aunt Brenda's sudden, menacing appearance, the swift, brutal slap, Mia's immediate terror, Brenda's cruel, triumphant smirk and chilling laugh. And then the chilling dismissiveness of my own parents and relatives, their faces perfectly visible, their voices perfectly audible, justifying the abuse. Every single horrifying moment captured an undeniable truth. Asterisk the rest of the wedding. Weekend was a blur of forced smiles and carefully orchestrated avoidance. I kept Mia close, shielding her from the false pleasantries and condescending glances of my relatives. I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't confront them then. And there, they were too deeply entrenched in their self-righteousness and collective denial, and I needed to be strategic, to be smart. But my mind was already racing, furiously formulating a plan that would ensure justice for Mia and an unbreakable boundary for our future. Asterisk, the first, most crucial step was to ensure Mia's well-being. The moment we were back home, I took her to a discreet pediatrician, explaining the incident as an unfortunate accident with a relative for Mia's sake, but ensuring the examination documented any physical findings, however minor. The pediatrician, a kind and astute woman, recognized the signs of trauma immediately. Asterisk, I then immediately scheduled an appointment with a child psychologist, not just for Mia, but for myself, to navigate the emotional aftermath and understand the absolute best way to support my daughter through this ordeal. This was about healing, not just revenge. Asterisk next, the undeniable evidence. I transferred the raw footage from the hidden camera to multiple secure, encrypted hard drives and cloud storage accounts. I consulted a lawyer immediately, not just any lawyer, but one specializing specifically in family law and child protection, highly recommended by Mia's school counselor. Her name was Anya, and her sharp, empathetic gaze combined with her no-nonsense demeanor instantly told me she understood the gravity of the situation. When I showed her the raw, unedited video, her face hardened with a quiet fury. "Sarah," she said, her voice firm and unwavering, "this is a clear and undeniable case of assault, and their justification. That's deeply disturbing. We have a very strong case." Asterisk Anya meticulously advised me on the legal steps we would take, the potential consequences for Aunt Brenda, and most importantly, how to mentally prepare for and navigate the inevitable, vicious family backlash. She emphasized that my absolute priority was Mia's well-being and establishing an irreversible boundary between us and their toxicity. She also advised me to speak to the official wedding photographer and videographer, subtly asking if they had any candid shots or wide-angle footage from that specific area during that exact time, just in case my discrete footage wasn't enough to build an irrefutable case. To my profound surprise and relief, the wedding videographer had indeed captured a sweeping, wide-angle shot of the dance floor area, clearly showing Brenda's raised hand, the precise moment of the slap, and Mia's immediate terrified reaction, albeit without direct sound. It was powerful, independent, and completely unbiased corroborating evidence. Asterisk, the family, meanwhile, remained utterly ensconced in their bubble of self-congratulation and denial. In the days and weeks following the wedding, I received a barrage of calls and texts from various relatives, subtly and not so subtly reiterating that I needed to let it go, that Brenda meant well, and that family sticks together, always. My mother even called, her voice dripping with thinly veiled accusation, suggesting that I needed to apologize to Aunt Brenda for overreacting and causing such an unnecessary rift. Each dismissive message, each casual justification for child abuse, each failed threat simply fueled my resolve, hardening my steel. Asterisk, I chose the precise moment for confrontation with meticulous care. It would not be in a private meeting, where they could easily gaslight me, twist my words, and verbally bludgeon me into submission. It had to be public, undeniable, and impossible for them to spin or dismiss. 3 weeks after the wedding, my parents hosted a seemingly innocuous family brunch at their sprawling home, ostensibly to rehash all the wonderful wedding memories, and subtly coax me back into their fold. I knew it was a trap, a subtle, manipulative attempt to reassert control and dismiss the incident. I arrived, Mia by my side, radiating a calm composure that belied the storm raging within me. I had also sent a discreet invitation to Anya, my lawyer, disguised as a distant family friend, asking her to arrive discreetly at a specific, prearranged time, asterisk, as brunch wound down, and my relatives began sharing rose-tinted anecdotes about the wedding. My father, oblivious to the impending storm, raised a crystal glass. To family, he boomed, his voice resonating with false cheer, and to the unwavering values that hold us together, like respect. Everyone around the large dining table chimed in, murmuring agreement, their faces adorned with polite, oblivious smiles. Aunt Brenda beamed, basking in the collective approval, her eyes glinting with a self-satisfied smugness. Asterisk, that was my cue. I stood up slowly, deliberately, holding my phone in my hand, connected wirelessly to their large living room TV. Before we toast to respect, I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the pleasant chatter like a surgical knife, I think we need to truly understand what true respect actually looks like. And more importantly, what it absolutely doesn't. Asterisk, I press play. The large screen flashed to life, displaying the pristine wedding ballroom. The soft strains of the waltz music, Mia's innocent laughter, Aunt Brenda's menacing figure approaching, the swift, brutal slap, Mia's immediate terror, Brenda's cruel, triumphant smirk and chilling laugh. Then the camera showed my parents. Their faces clearly visible, their dismissive nods, and their voices perfectly audible, justifying the abuse. She was teaching respect. The entire room went utterly, chillingly silent. Forks clattered onto plates. Conversations died mid-sentence. All eyes were glued to the screen, then to Brenda, then to me. Asterisk, Aunt Brenda's face contorted in a silent scream of pure, unadulterated rage and disbelief. My parents' jaws dropped, their eyes wide with horror, not at the footage, but at the betrayal of their carefully guarded secret being exposed. Other relatives gasped, some turning away in disgust, some staring at the screen, unable to deny the undeniable truth unfolding before their very eyes. Asterisk. This, I said, my voice now trembling slightly with the raw force of long-suppressed emotion, but unwavering in its conviction. This is what you call teaching respect? Physically assaulting a defenseless 6-year-old child for being too loud. And this, I paused, gesturing to my parents and Brenda, my hand sweeping across the room. This is what you call family, defending a clear act of violence, laughing at a child's pain, and demanding that I apologize for protecting my own daughter. Asterisk, Aunt Brenda, enraged and cornered, lunged at me, screaming incoherent threats and accusations, her face a mask of pure venom. My father, recovering his composure with alarming speed, bellowed, "Sarah, turn that off. This is outrageous. You're ruining everything, our family name." My mother, pale as a ghost, tried to physically block the screen, her hands shaking. But just then, the doorbell rang. Anya, my lawyer, stepped into the room, a calm, authoritative presence in the storm. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice clear and cutting. "I believe this footage constitutes irrefutable evidence of assault. We are here to discuss legal action." The brunch dissolved into utter, irredeemable chaos. Brenda was physically restrained by a bewildered relative, shrieking accusations and threats. My parents, now fully enraged and exposed, turned their fury on me, calling me ungrateful, manipulative, a disgrace to the family. They tried every trick in their manipulative playbook: gaslighting, guilt-tripping, threatening to disown me, attempting to twist the narrative one last time. But their words, once so potent and fear-inducing now, held no power over me. Mia, standing quietly beside me, clutched my hand, her eyes wide, but surprisingly calm. For the very first time, she saw her truth validated, undeniably, for all to see. The legal battle that followed was arduous, brutal, and emotionally draining, but I was prepared for every dirty trick and every baseless accusation. Aunt Brenda hired an expensive, aggressive lawyer, insisting she was maliciously slandered and that her actions were entirely justified discipline. My family publicly denounced me, spreading vicious rumors, contacting our distant relatives to discredit me, and attempting to ostracize me completely. They even went as far as to file a ludicrous restraining order against me for harassment, which was promptly and decisively dismissed by the courts. But my evidence was simply irrefutable. The crystal-clear video footage, Anya's expert legal strategy, and the compelling psychological reports on Mia's distress all painted a clear, undeniable picture of the abuse and the family's complicity. Asterisk the judge, presented with the overwhelming and undeniable evidence, ruled swiftly and unequivocally. Aunt Brenda was found guilty of assault and battery, facing significant financial penalties, a mandated period of intensive anger management counseling, and crucially, a permanent restraining order preventing her from having any contact whatsoever with Mia. The rest of my family, though not legally charged, faced public humiliation and severe social consequences. Their carefully crafted image of respectability, built on a foundation of lies and denial, crumbled into dust. They were exposed as enablers of child abuse, their justifications hollow, their respect a mere facade for control. Asterisk, I walked out of that courthouse a victor, not just legally, but profoundly, personally. The oppressive weight of years of their emotional manipulation, their dismissals, their demands lifted, replaced by a profound sense of lightness, freedom, and renewed purpose. My family disowned me, just as they had repeatedly threatened. But it wasn't a punishment. It was the ultimate liberation, severing the last ties to a toxic past. Asterisk, I found a new, quieter, and infinitely healthier life for Mia and myself. We moved to a charming cottage on the outskirts of a small, supportive community, surrounded by genuine, kind people. I started a small business creating educational children's videos, a fusion of my passion for videography and my unwavering desire to create safe, positive, and empowering content for children. My work unexpectedly flourished, touching the lives of thousands of parents and children who resonated with my message of love and authentic respect. Asterisk, I never looked back at the family who chose image over integrity, who chose tradition over truth. Aunt Brenda's once impeccable reputation was utterly ruined. She became a social pariah, shunned even by some who had once defended her. My parents continued to live in their isolated bubble of denial, their family gatherings now sparse, strained, and haunted by the truth they refused to acknowledge. Months turned into years. Mia blossomed, her laughter echoing freely and without a shadow of fear. She grew into a confident, compassionate, and incredibly resilient young girl who knew her worth, who understood true respect. I found genuine friendships, people who became my chosen family, based on mutual respect, empathy, and unconditional love, a stark contrast to the conditional acceptance I had always known. On Mia's 10th birthday, surrounded by friends who truly celebrated her vibrant spirit and infectious joy, she drew me a picture. It was of us holding hands under a bright, soaring rainbow bathed in sunshine. Beneath it, in her neat, childish handwriting, she wrote, "My mom is my hero. She teaches me real respect." That day, standing there, holding my daughter's hand, I knew more deeply than ever before that true respect is never taught through fear or violence, but through unwavering love, fierce protection, and the unyielding courage to stand up for what is right, no matter the cost, no matter who you have to leave behind. My story wasn't just about escaping a toxic family. It was about tearing down the old broken foundations and building a new one, brick by precious brick, based on authentic love, unwavering truth, and unbreakable self-respect. Not obligation. Tell me in the comments, from where are you watching from?